pain. It's the one thing we all have in common. But what if the one thing that broke you is also the same thing that could build you? Here on Pain with a Purpose, we don't run from the hard stuff. We face it head on. Because on the other side of addiction, heartbreak, trauma, and loss is redemption. This show isn't about perfection. It's about truth. It's about people who have been to hell and have found a way back. Not just surviving, but thriving. Whether you're in the fight, walking alongside someone who is, or just need to be reminded that hope still exists, you're in the right place. This is Pain with a Purpose. Real stories, real recovery, and real purpose. So with that, welcome back to Season 3, Episode 2, with Pain with a Purpose, with Katie Peterson. Came directly here from Georgia.
Well, I was up here this weekend.
I was trying to make it sound a little bit cooler, that like you had nothing going on and you just came directly here.
Drove up from Atlanta.
You had a wedding, right?
Yeah.
Was it your like childhood friend that you grew up with?
Yeah. So I'm from South Jersey. This was my best friend since I was like 10 years old. So she got married this weekend. I was a bridesmaid in the wedding. It was really, really sweet.
Now, was she one of the individuals that like stuck by your side? Like, obviously you're on Pain with a Purpose, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like, you know, you went through some sort of pain, probably related to like, yeah. Did she stick by your side the whole time?
Yeah, so pretty much. And then surprisingly, when I got sober this time, me and her had this like period where we didn't talk for probably a little bit over a year. And then she had reached out a couple times to the guy I was dating just to like see how I was and stuff like that. I forget which one of us like reached out first, but one of us did, and you know, we started to like rebuild our relationship from there. But it took like a little while for us to talk again because she was over it. Everybody was over it at that point. It actually this time a lot of people didn't really talk to me in my early like first year. I could keep getting sober. I just could never stay. Mm-hmm. So I kept there was like this period of a couple years where I would get like 3 months, 6 months, 30 days, 9 months. So like I kept getting everybody's like hopes up and then just like pulling the rug out again, you know, for the umpteenth time.
So when was when was the first time you went to treatment?
Right out of high school, to Seabrook House in South Jersey.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And they're closing.
I heard.
Yeah.
I heard.
I mean, that's like literally the same story as me. Unfortunately, like I just never got sober, right? Like I would just go I don't know, it felt like every 30 days or every like 90 days, I was like back in treatment. And then I eventually got like a real taste of sobriety. Like I did the suggestion that everybody always like tells you to do, like go to sober living, go to like, you know, extended care, do something outside of just going home. And I always said that I was going to go to a 12-step fellowship. I just never did.
Yeah.
And then I finally went to a sober house. When I got to the sober house, as a direct result of not getting high, like my life got really good. I stayed sober for like 10 months and then I was like, I'm out. You know what I mean? I finally went back home and immediately back to getting high again. I feel like, and I think the reason why I'm saying that is because like, I feel like everybody thinks that like, or a lot of people that I come in contact with, they're like, oh, wow, like you know, because I've been sober for a number of years. They're like, no, dude, like I went in and out for years.
Yeah.
And I just happened to get sober and it stuck. And I absolutely like, you know, dove into the 12 steps and like went through like a lot of like hard work on myself. But like a lot of these younger kids or even people our age at this point that are still going into treatment, they're like, oh, well, you know, it must be. No, it was literally the same.
Yeah.
Literally the exact same thing.
Yeah. My experience, my first time was, I mean, a little bit different. I wasn't even in Seabrook that long. Like 2 weeks, I think I was there, 2-3 weeks. When I got out, I went to Park Bench. I don't think they're open anymore. Yeah.
They are.
It was like a little, are they?
Yeah.
Wow. Shout out Park Bench. Mm-hmm. I drove there every day. I had like a little flip phone that was all my dad would like let me have. I started going to meetings and I remember like going my home. I don't even want to say home group. It was not that serious for me. I was going to the Lighthouse on, I think it was Friday and Sunday nights at the time.
So before
when it was just
the Lighthouse.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was going to like an NA meeting there on Friday nights. And I remember like I'm young, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing people like share their stories, and I would see these people that were like 30. I think that was like old back then, you know, but like 40, 50, 60, like struggling to get one day clean. And that was just not my experience at that time, you know, like I went through treatment. It was my first time in treatment. So it was like very easy for me. No part of me really thought I was going to like stay sober. I wasn't even thinking that long, like into the future, you know, like I started experiencing some consequences, whatever. My parents like forced me into treatment. And then I was just, you know, just clean, like going to meetings. And
Well, your first time going in though, were you the stuff that you were using the first time you went in, right? Was it the same stuff that you were using the last time you went in? So like it's different. I mean, it was the same, but it was different, right? Where it was like, oh, like parents might be overreacting.
Yeah.
Like they knew long before
but
us.
I also didn't know what I didn't know then. You know what I mean? So my first time going in, I'm like, oh, maybe I won't ever use again. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know that this was going to be like a lifelong journey, that I had to like grow along these like spiritual guidelines that people talk about, or else I'm like kind of like fucked, you know? So am I allowed to curse? Sorry.
No cursing on the show.
Really?
Thanks for watching the previous episodes. You can curse whenever you want. I curse all the time.
Now I forget what I was talking about.
Just talking about like how you knew that like, this was going to be an ongoing process.
Yeah, like I didn't know that my first time, you know? So like your first time in treatment, you tell yourself, I'm never going to use again. You believe it, you know? I work in treatment now and I talk to people every single day. They'll come in detox only. And the moment they start feeling better, they're like, there's no way that I could use or drink again after like going through this, feeling like this, putting my family through this. And you can't really tell them like, oh, dog, you have like no idea. You know what I mean? But like you truly believe that, you know, your first time. I've spoken to a lot of people that was their like experience.
Or what about the people that it's not their first time? It's like their 10th time, right? And like I've been there, I get it, right? When it's like I'm just coming in for detox only, I'm just, you know, and then like I'm gonna get back on the horse, and it's like you're not. I mean, like don't get me wrong, people can do it.
Oh yeah,
but like you're not, right? Like for me, I don't know why or how when I got sober it all happened and came to fruition, but like I am a firm believer of like karma, if that even makes sense, right? Like just going about it the right way. So like when I did get sober, it was only literally 7 days, and then insurance was like, you got to go, bud. But I went back to a top bunk at a recovery house, right? Like, and I went back and I went back to the home group. But like these people that come in, and again, sure, you can get sober, right? But like typically what I see is that like they come in, I'm only coming in for detox only, and then like if you're lucky,
I see them again a month later.
If you're lucky, yeah.
And then they do the same thing a month later.
You know, thank God for the people that like rallied around me when I was getting sober, because they were like, you're not terminally unique, dude. Like what makes you think that like history's not going to repeat itself?
Yeah.
You know, so like when we're, you know, I don't know, I could do a whole tangent on that because it's like, it's sad.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, so parents forced you in for the first time. I knew a little bit about you because we had just talked before, because we got some food beforehand. Dad's a ex-cop.
Yeah.
So kind of had to like
cop, detective,
kind of had
Atlantic
to follow
City
through
Police
with like
Department.
going,
Yeah.
Okay.
But even them, like, you know, my first experience with opiates was I had a major surgery in high school. And I remember like I was on opiates for like a while after that surgery. I had to have like full wrist reconstruction. I had like a tumor in my wrist. I was getting surgery at Children's Hospital Philadelphia. And my parents were giving me this medication as prescribed, you know? But you know, like when you're on opiates for pain and there becomes that fine line where it's like, okay, am I in enough pain where I need the pain medication, or would an ibuprofen 800 suffice? You know what I mean? I was 15 years old at the time, so I didn't know how to like articulate that. Like all I knew was, oh, I'm still in pain, so I need to ask for like another, you know, pain pill. You know what I mean? And like even with, you know, like my dad being like cop at the time, whatever, I think back during that time, the opiate thing was still so like stigmatized as like the homeless heroin addict. You know what I mean? I remember my parents flying down to Florida when I was in treatment, and I will never forget my dad telling my counselor, like, this doesn't happen to families like us.
Yeah.
You know, so
listen, you were probably very much like still in pain, right? And even when you were getting better, nobody really knew back then that like this was going to be, you know, and like, again, I go in my head all the time about like, was I born with this thing or was I not?
Oh,
right. Like if opiates never came into my life, would I be this way? I really don't know. I've also stopped trying to figure it out. I've also tried to relapse a million different ways. So like I kind of know my truth at this point. But back then nobody knew, right? Nobody knew that like they were trying to help their daughter out. She's in pain. She just had a major surgery, right? And you were taking it probably as prescribed. Turns out when when they run out though, now you're sick.
But what I did know was that I did have a couple friends. Like I remember I was like full arm cast for like a while. And I remember going to some friends on the weekends. And if I was like sleeping over, staying out late, my mom would give me some of like I just remember,
take homes.
Well, I don't remember if like my parents would give it to me or I would just take one because I like knew I was going out. But I remember being around people that were like asking me for them. So like I started to kind of, you know, catch on like, you know, and again, it got to a point where I wasn't in that much pain. So I was getting high, you know, I was getting high, not really knowing like that's what it was. But I do remember that it started making everything that I was experiencing like good, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. So like you were 15 at the time?
Yeah.
I was a freshman in high school and like, you know, took my first whatever, whether it was a 5 or a 7.5, doesn't really matter. Like fast forward middle of like freshman year, like I was like that kid, me and my buddy that were getting sick like at lunchtime every day because we were withdrawing. And it wasn't until I literally Googled it on my phone and I was like, oh my God, like I got to like find these things. But like up until that point, I had no clue what I was really doing until I did. And then like I fell right into like what we do, essentially like doing everything and anything to get whatever I had to do to get one more. So that was your first time, right? Going in. So you were like 18, 19. And then you went like a number of times after that. And then.
Well, you know what? Not really a number of times. I went to Florida after that, went to treatment, and then had, you know, I stayed sober while I still had insurance, and then I relapsed and had no insurance anymore. So my going in and out more so looked like finding some way to get a couple days clean, whether that was like in an apartment, in a car, whatever, and then like going into halfway for a couple days or act like a couple months sometimes, you know, and then kind of just like repeating that process like over and over and over again for years.
Which is crazy because like, and like not that I'm any better or like above any of that. Clearly you're not, you did it, right? But like thinking about it today, like while you're sober and being like, all right, I'm going to sleep in my car for like 3-4 days. I'll get a clean urine. I'll go into a halfway. That seems like a foreign thing.
Oh my God. And then I was like immediately planning when they would like UA me at the halfway. I'm like, okay, when are they going to UA me again? I would wait to get a couple to see if there was like a pattern on when they were like drug testing me, you know, to try to like get by that way. But yeah, I mean, even this last time me getting clean, like, you know, I wasn't lucky enough. I didn't go into treatment. It's actually like really crazy, my like getting sober story. I got dropped off by a friend to a hospital who told me to go in and tell them that I wanted to like hurt myself. And I was in a like complete psychosis. I used something that I thought was something else and they would not Baker Act me.
So what year was this?
This was 2021.
So was it Flocka?
I don't know. Who knows?
Because that was like
that's
big
not what
down
I
there.
asked for. That's all I know. You know. But it put me in like this like lucid psychosis. Right. She drops me off at the hospital. I try to Baker Act myself. They wouldn't Baker Act me. The psych there kept like interviewing me, whatever, and then just kept saying that I didn't meet criteria. Like,
wait,
for Baker
what is
Act.
Baker Act?
That's like where they do like the 72-hour hold.
For psych stuff.
You know, at this specific hospital, if you get the hold and then you're detoxing, they'll like keep you to like detox and stuff like that. So that's what I was essentially trying to do. The night before she had dropped me off there, I got no car accident, wrecked my car, no phone. So I'm in this psychosis, no phone, at this hospital now. They wouldn't Baker Act me. I don't remember anybody's number to call because I'm in this psychosis. So I kept like walking outside, sleeping outside of the hospital, going back in like 12 hours later, trying to Baker Act myself again. They kept denying me. This went on for like 4 days. before they
Oh, they
finally,
loved you. They were like, dude,
it
this
was
girl.
so bad. It was weird. I think they like knew that I wasn't like homeless because I had a Gucci purse, completely empty, with burn
you get
holes on
away.
the inside from.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I whispered that. Like
the mic
crack
definitely
pipe.
got it.
But so they eventually called the girl that had dropped me off there. She put her name down as my emergency contact. They called her after a couple days. She called my dad, and my dad said, I will pay for like 1 or 2 weeks of like sober living. That's it. We are done. This is freaking it.
Yeah.
So the hospital, I guess they were like they would work with this halfway house sometimes. They dropped me off there. They told them that I had like just completed like a big rat, clean urine. Dude, I get there. I have no shoes. I am like covered in like dirt head to toe. In like a sports bra, like just like filthy, Couldn't pass the UA. Like the whole thing lit up. And I remember looking at the girl. I like still reach out to a couple of those girls that like let me stay every year on like my date, because I'm just like, dude, if it wasn't for you guys, like I don't know if I would still be here. But they let me stay. Because I told them, if you guys don't let me stay, like I'm not gonna make it another. I always get really emotional when I talk about that, because like I do think that they had no reason to let me stay. They shouldn't have let me. Like usually sober livings won't do that kind of thing. Like, and they did. And from that point on, it just kind of, I made that decision that, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like the party's over. I had a feeling like, oh, I'm like a loser now, kind of. I've always had a big ego, like getting high or not. And like when I thought that about myself, like, you're a fucking loser, dude. I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good,
No,
And
I had that same thought.
People had counted me out. Nobody was surprised anymore when they heard that I was like using. And I just, the other thing too is like when I was in the hospital, I remember thinking like, damn, I really want my parents to like see me do more. My brother's a cop. He like followed in my dad's footsteps. And I remember thinking like, yo, like when my dad and mom get, older and somebody needs to take care, who the fuck's gonna do that? When am I still gonna be like getting high? Like doing like this shit? Like it was like that moment of like, dude, the party's over and I don't know what happened, but like I didn't go through any like withdrawal, went into the halfway that day.
Well, you were just, other than the psychosis.
Yes. Never thought about getting high again after that day, ever. It's not even come as like a fleeting thought, it was kind of like removed from me then. And it never, even going through some like difficult situations, like it just never even came up again to.
I mean, so that time around, did you do like AA, NA, like the 12 steps?
Yeah, I've always been like I always crawl back to 12 step. When I was in New Jersey, it was NA was like big there. So I did that. Down in Florida, I was introduced to AA. And that's just kind of where I like stuck,
Yeah.
But yeah, I always went back there. This time around, I did like 4 or 5 months of like some deep EMDR trauma therapy.
Okay.
Which
I heard that's like a wild time.
I like always go like have this like back and forth in my head of like, I think that's like what did it. That like solidified my sobriety for me. You know what I mean? Because I just think it like complemented like the 12-step work that I do. And I just think without having done that trauma work, I truly don't believe I would have, stayed sober.
So, because like EMDR takes a longer time, right? Because I remember like people asking me just like in what I do for work, right? They're like, well, do you guys offer like trauma therapy? And I'm like, well,
we have ART.
Well, and like we're trauma informed, right? But like as far as like EMDR, like that would be like ripping a Band-Aid off of like a bullet wound, right? And then like sending you on your way and being like, good luck.
Yeah.
And I've never been through EMDR, but that's just the way that it's been kind of explained to me. But I remember having that same exact thought, right? And I also wasn't. So when I got sober, I was 23. But I was like sleeping on the top bunk at this recovery house, and I'm like, dude, this is your fucking life. Like, you're back at a recovery house again for the fucking second time. You've been in treatment now almost 10 times. you're a fucking loser.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to go in and out of treatment for the next, every 6 months. You just like, they know you by your first name.
That's the worst. The loser feeling was like,
Mhm.
oh, that was like the worst for me.
Unfortunately,
worst.
like, that was never enough for me to like stay sober, but it was
Yeah.
like, that was my reality, right?
Mhm.
Whereas like all I knew how to do well was essentially wake up, figure out a way to hurt somebody closest to me, right? Whether I be army crawling on their floor for money or stealing money out of someone's back. Like, I've literally done all of that. And literally the best thing, my best result up until that point got me in Bucks County, Pennsylvania at a top bunk.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, God forbid, like, somebody that had like sober time or like the recovery house manager was like, yo, dude, you're not going to make your bed. I'm like, yo, watch how you talk to me, dude. I'm a fucking grown ass man, So like my perception, my ego, my pride was all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I remember that thought. It was like, because like much like yourself, right? Like, I'm sure that like you never woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to burn this all to the ground. I can't wait to be a drug addict for the next.
No way.
The problem is that like the people that were probably like, stay away from Katie, or like they were like, yo, stay away from Woods, he's a scum, really thought that I was like purposely trying to do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, if that was the case, like, you know what I mean? I would have also got sober at 19 the first time I went to treatment. So anyway, so you got sober eventually, right?
Mhm.
In Florida. Went through a ton of trauma therapy.
Ton of AA stuff. I didn't do anything this time around without, well, the day that I got dropped off at the halfway, I didn't have a phone. It was destroyed in that car accident.
Probably for
from
the best.
Mm-hmm. So I asked the halfway manager if she could find my sponsor on Facebook and message her. And I needed her to ask her if she was still willing to be my sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
And then if she was, if I could have her number to call her. And because I like went to Walmart and got like I had just got my last stimulus check. So I had like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Boost
I had
Mobile.
enough money to get, a little phone. And
Boost Mobile, what was it?
I don't
Virgin
even remember,
Mobile?
man. And I had no idea. Somebody else had to put it together for me because I had no idea, Even throughout all my using, shout out to Carl for always keeping me on the family plan. Like, forever.
Carl's a good guy.
The best guy in the world. But so I called my sponsor, and she said something to me that like for the first time, like I heard it and it was like loud, and she was like, "Are you ready to like get better?" And and I like believed her, I believed, like, when she asked that, it didn't even feel like she was like asking me a question. It was just like, it felt like she was making a statement to me, like, you're gonna get better if you like just do what I like tell you to do. You know what I mean? And yeah, from that moment on, I did everything. I got really involved in AA down there too. And just man, I just tried my best every day to like be better, to like not hurt somebody, and to like just start making like living amends for the shit that I had like done,
I mean, I'm a firm believer, and if someone has a different experience, right, rock out, like, more power to you. I wish I had that experience, but like, if you're like myself or you, right, like, there was no other way for me to really get sober other than the way that I did, with like fully immersing myself into the 12-step fellowship, having a sponsor, going through the work, having a home group, like literally making recovery my life for however long it literally, and it still very much is my life, but every single day, if not multiple times a day, for a couple years.
Oh yeah.
I was in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, to the point where like I was willing to like beat people up with the big book. You know what I mean? Because it saved my life.
Yeah.
And up until that point, like I literally, all I ever knew was like, from what I can really remember with like me making my own decisions, right, was like me playing sports in high school, quickly becoming a drug addict, right? Trying to rob everybody and anything that wasn't like nailed down either at school or my house. Quickly landing in rehab, and then like going back and forth between rehab for the next like 2 years, every couple months. And it's like, next thing you know, I went through this work, which I honestly did not believe in on the front end. And my life got exponentially better, and I actually never like really fought a drink or a drug since.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, so, and to this day, probably why I have like, and why I'm willing to talk about all this stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Because like, there is a better life for every single one of us. Just like your sponsor being like, you ready to get better? Like, you ready to get well? If you would have told me that, like, imagine like if you went into rehab that last time, right? And they were like, Katie, thank God you showed up on a Tuesday, because today we're offering never have to struggle with this ever again.
Yeah.
And they were like, all you got to do is like get brutally honest, make some amends. And like, if they would have said that, I would have been like, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, that's not what was usually said. Usually it's like, you need to find a new hobby and you need to, you know, and it's like, it never worked for me.
Yeah.
Right. Everything that like was being told to me through this work completely contradicted what I believed in, essentially, but completely transformed my life, which was like the weirdest thing ever. That's my whole rant on like the spirituality side of things.
I'm like really glad that I got sober when I did too, because even though I was, you know, my drug of choice definitely did turn into like the fentanyl and stuff. But nowadays it's like, that's all. Like when I was using, it was, you know, a little questionable. Sometimes I got real stuff. Sometimes it wasn't. Now it's just like nothing, you know, it is, everything is in, or fentanyl's in everything now. And
it's crazy.
I was like talking to somebody the other day and I was saying like, you know, I feel bad for this younger generation that doesn't have this like, not like I don't feel bad that they don't have like an experimental phase, but like their experimental phase could kill them their first time. You know what I mean? And like we didn't experience that. Ours was like going in the medicine cabinet at our parents' house and, you know, stuff like that. Or like,
I say it and it's like a sick joke, right? But like if you're in recovery, you get it. If God forbid someone's watching this and they're not in recovery and you're just a loved one, this one's probably not for you. But
sorry, Dad.
I say it all the time, like to my boys. I'm like, God forbid I want to like, you know, go out and have a little fun, throw it all away. Can't even do that because God like, forbid, you know, God forbid I get to the wrong bag. Like, and that's like how crazy it is, right? Like you used to be able to, this is not even like a shouldn't even be a real statement, right? But like you used to be able to like relapse and have a fighting chance to get back.
Yes.
It's like insane, the shit that we see now.
There's like something real bad. So I just recently moved to Atlanta for work a couple months ago. And
the new Hollywood. That's what people say.
I told you that's what people say.
For the record, nobody's saying this. She said this right before the episode. She was like, yeah, no, Atlanta is the new Hollywood.
They're
like,
filming movies there. They're doing things there.
Okay.
Atlanta, there's like stuff. Okay. Listen, if you ever make a trip down there, I'm trying to get like all my friends on board to like come out there and like, you know, it's fun.
Is everybody like, yeah, we'll make our way down there soon. I had to throw that. It was like
it's very there's a lot of like art and like that kind of stuff, you know, and
right? Like Savannah's really nice. You haven't been there yet?
Who knows? Yeah.
I've never been, but I've just heard. You know
what I do like is that it's like city, and then I could drive 30, 40 minutes away and I could like hike a mountain, you know, or something.
And you guys still have beaches, right?
No.
Well,
they have lakes.
There's a coastline.
On Georgia? No, there's
not a coastline. We're going to have to cut that whole piece out.
Wow, because we both looked over.
We're cutting that piece out. So you guys have lakes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess they're all like lake people there, which I grew up on the river in Mays Landing. You know, so I've always been very close to the water, and you know, I enjoy.
No, I mean, I'm sure,
you know, being by the water and like doing things.
But regardless of the water, I'm sure it's like beautiful. You know what I mean? Like it's not like Bucks County.
Yeah, no, it is, and you know, I started working for this company, and their corporate office was in Florida, and I was like doing a lot of traveling back and forth because their facilities are in Georgia and Tennessee, and the traveling just started to like really like wear on me. Even though it was only like a week every month, 7 to 10 days every month, I would travel, live out of a suitcase for that week, get home, try to get back in my routine. And it just became really hard, and it actually got me like very separated from the program for a little bit. Because I would just come home and just feel like I don't have time, you know? And it actually got me to this point where like I was like sober, and I think that if you like really are ready to get clean and that obsession is like removed from you, that if you ever are going through a really hard time, it's not like the thought isn't like to go get high. It's like I want to like hurt myself. You know what I mean? And yeah, I was like separated from the program for a little bit, and I remember going back to Florida after one of my Atlanta trips, and I was like telling this like my sponsor, and she goes, well, go to a meeting. Like, I'm not meeting with you today. You know what I mean? Just like go to a meeting. And I remember I just picked the next meeting that was going on. It ended up being a meeting with like 2 people in it. And I remember walking in and instantly just feeling better. Like nobody had even said anything yet. And I just like felt better being there. And I remember being like mad that I felt better.
Fuck, it worked.
Right. No, like, cause I've been through like periods of my sobriety where I just wish it was just me doing it all. Like, I wish that I could like attribute all my sobriety to just me, and that's just not, and it ends up like slapping me in the face, and, it wasn't all me. And then I, return to the rooms or do whatever I have to do. And,
I mean, it's like a really good point, right? And it's also kind of like the whole basis on what I'd like this podcast to be, essentially, right? Where it's like, there's a lot of recovery podcasts out there. Maybe one day I'll just tag them, right? Just if I'm feeling some type of way. Where like they just sound really good all the time, right? And like that's not what recovery is. Don't get me wrong, like we don't struggle with a drink or a drug today, and like that is really not of my doing at all, right? Like something played a part in it, people played a part in it, actions that I like took early on played a part in it, and things I do today still play a little bit of a part in it. But much to your point, where it was like, I too have had many bouts of my sobriety where it's like I'm not doing much for my own personal recovery, and like I don't want a drink or a drug. I don't want that. But I absolutely have had thoughts before where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, if this is how I'm supposed to feel, if this is what 5, 6, 7 years of recovery feels like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's also been times where I felt that way when I was in the program and I was doing like everything that I was supposed to do. But like the best part about like your support network, right? Like whether they're like in Florida, Georgia, or like on the phone, right? Is that like one person can pull you out of it.
Oh yeah.
So like that's like not what this like podcast is, right? Where it's like this is like real stuff, and like we still struggle, we're still human. But yeah, I mean, like, unfortunately, right? Like that would be the easier softer way. If I was like, I'm just gonna go to the bar, like no, like I'm usually like driving my car, like how fast do I got to be going to like swerve one time?
Yeah.
And they're fleeting, right? And like I got to like really not be doing anything for a good amount of time to get to that point. But unfortunately, again, like my story is that, right? Where it's like I'll do the work like really, really like religiously, right? And then I'll fall off.
Oh yeah.
And then like I'll go to like these depths where I'm like, pain's still not great enough, pain's still not great enough. I'll tell my boss to go fuck himself. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, let's like figure something out here, or like I'll have like a really good, very like a friendship, right? And I'm like, next thing you know, I'm just having a huge falling out. And it's like, why would I even react that way?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, like there's still work to be done, but I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, right? Like I said, like you used to be able to relapse,
I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I hate hearing that. Like there's still work to be done.
I mean,
like, I'm not
is.
going to lie. I'm that girl that's like, oh, this is like a forever thing. You know what I mean? There's people that say that like the one day at a time, and that's cool. And most of the time I am able to like live that way. But there are times when I think like, damn, like this is forever. And I say that like it's like so much work that I have to do, which is really not, you know what I mean? But I will make it seem like it's like 500 pounds on me,
Well, it's the same concept of like when I'm doing good in my own personal life and like my recovery and work, whatever. And like someone's like, yo, are you okay? And like I like respond like, yeah, no, everything's pretty good. You know what I mean? Like I'm stressed out over here. I'm not doing enough over here. Or like if I'm not doing anything, right? And someone's like, yo, you all right? I'm like, what the fuck you mean? Am I all right?
yeah. I'm like, do you think I'm high? What are you talking about? I instantly will go, why did they say that? I'll lose sleep for like weeks.
So it's the same thing with like sometimes when I say like there's more work to be done, it's like, fuck, dude, like they said, like I'm going to be working on myself for the rest of my life. Or if I'm in a better place at any given time, right? I'm like, There's more work to be done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I like
It's
that.
like, so it's like my perception and how like,
I like that. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because like it literally happened to me with my coworker the other day. He was like, "Yo, you good?" I'm like, "Fuck. What do you mean, dude?" He was like, "No, I'm just asking." I'm like, "No, what? Like, why are you
Yeah.
asking that?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
do I look off? Like, what's going on?" I shouldn't react that way. Um, maybe there's more work to be done. I don't know. So what's it look like now? You just moved, right? So
I
now you're
just
in Georgia.
moved. I'm in Georgia and I love it. I love it. I have some like, I will say this. I probably like 10 months ago, got out of the relationship that I was in. Great guy. It just like wasn't,
Mhm.
working out. And so I've been like single, since then. And over the last 10 months, like I've really like honed in on like the women in my life. And there's like two of them specifically. My friends like Sarah. Sarah's in Florida, Katie is in Georgia, and they've just been like I've just been like having the best time with like my girls. Like my girls like in recovery and just like
Mhm.
as like being like women in recovery, like successful. You know what I mean? Like it looks so much different than like my sobriety, the periods I would have like in my 20s.
Mhm.
It's just like a lot different now, and the things we talk about, the things we do.
Well, we're getting older.
I know.
You talked
I know.
about like your first experience with going to a meeting at like the lighthouse, right? And seeing people that
Mhm.
are like 30 years old and you were like, "Oh, I thought that was like,"
Oh
no, we're
yeah.
getting old.
Oh yeah.
Like the shit that I hear myself talking about and like actually like intrigued on like having conversations on, I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah.
We used to talk about nothing, right? Or we used to like go, I don't even know where I would even say that we were doing like an early, like going out was going to a meeting.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I
I went to
mean?
bingo a couple weekends ago
Oh yeah, you're getting
at
old.
yeah.
You're getting
A
real
bunch
old.
of me and my girlfriends went, and it was, I'll tell you what,
Georgia recovery is
I will
different
tell
down
you
there.
what, bingo on a Saturday night at the VFW is no joke. It's their sport.
Yeah.
It's their sport. Like when I'm telling you, I thought it was going to be like fun,
How
little
much
blah,
are you
blah,
playing
blah.
for though?
Dude, there's like $500 prizes. I was getting like pissed. Like
Mm-hmm.
Betty behind me is like winning, and I'm like
Betty's
pissed. You
70
know what
years
I
old,
mean?
by the way.
Older than
She
that usually.
she's quick.
But they'll have like 100 sheets of paper in front of them. You know what I mean? I can barely keep up on like one,
Oh yeah, because you can play.
you know,
Is there a limit on how many they can play at one
I
time?
don't think so. But so I'm looking at Katie. I'm asking her, what's the number they just called? She's telling me to like shut up and look at the screen, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, so those are the kind of things, a lot of like Pilates. I joined like a co-ed softball team that I was like on. And
Okay,
I'm trying to think like what else I've been like doing
that's the
recently.
whole
But
name of
it's
the
just
game,
it
though. Like you
is
can do whatever you want.
like life is just like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like fun now. You know what I mean? Like it's very like content.
Mm-hmm.
I cook every night. I go to the gym. I work, and it's
Now, are you
very
still traveling a lot to like Tennessee for work?
no. They. So we're growing a little bit. So somebody like came on and they kind of like took over a majority of like the Tennessee stuff. So my focus is now just mainly Georgia.
So you have like a sense of normalcy again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, it's crazy, right? Because I'm going through it now, where I'm like very much like living out of a suitcase, like for like half the week.
It's tough.
And at first I was like, oh, this is cool.
I loved
It was
that
a little bit
first.
like intriguing, right? But like now it's like, if I'm really being honest, right? Like I still have my suitcase in my car from last week.
Yeah.
I leave tomorrow. So all the stuff that's in my car
It's
is
just gone.
dirty. So like I still have to like, you know what I mean? It's just like another, it sounds good until you're doing
I
it.
had to start booking hotels that had like the little kitchens in it
Mm-hmm.
just to feel some sort of
Yeah.
like normal, because my first few times I remember just getting like the old school hotels that were like just like bathroom and bed.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm, with like the red carpet, like I'm gonna,
Oh, you were at the Super 8.
Oh, no, it would be like the Hilton.
You don't got to live like that anymore.
Be like the Hilton in like, one of
Yeah.
like the suburbs of Atlanta. But yeah,
So
it can be.
I will say this though, right? No matter like how easy or hard it was when you were traveling and whatnot, because like obviously we connected at some point over like Instagram, right? And like I just like I see everybody's shit. And like a lot of like maybe what you do subconsciously is like you still make recovery look appealing.
Yeah.
Right? Especially I would assume to like a woman or like a younger woman. Because it doesn't look like it's a death sentence.
No.
And I get that social media is not real, right? But like, it doesn't have to like, you still can do fun
Yeah.
shit.
Well, my whole thing, and I think I struggled with this the most, was like in like the times I tried getting sober before, but this time it was like, okay, I need to create a life that feels better than the physical relief I got from like getting high. You know what I mean? So like every time I was getting like 30 days, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but I'm not like doing anything. Like I'm not doing like there was always like a ceiling and it was very low, you know, and I'm like fine with like the little like call center job in Florida and like the food stamps and, you know, like stuff like that. When I was like living my life like that, it was always very easy for me to relapse because didn't have much going on, you know? So like this time around, I'm like, dude, let's create a life. A lot of it too had to do around like my parents. Like I wanted to like prepare myself for like, they have showed up for me like so much in my life that I'm like, dude, I know there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to like show up for them. You know what I mean? My parents are both like fine now. You know what I mean? Like they don't need,
you can't take Carl out.
No, but no way. But there will be a time, you know, and I needed to like start preparing myself, whether it was like financially, whatever it was, to make sure that it wasn't all just put on my brother, you know? So that's been like really like my driving force. But it was like, yeah, let's get kind of like successful and just start like living like a cool fucking life.
It's
you
a
know?
whole nother part of recovery that I don't think is talked about too much, right? And I think that we actually should talk about it more. Where like we are allowed as people that are like former addicts in recovery, right? Whatever you identify as, recovering alcoholic, recovering addict, recovered, whatever you want to call it, right? We are allowed to fucking want more out of our life.
I want so much more.
And whether that be like more life, more financial freedom, especially in the sense of like a professional, successful life, right? Where it's like, when I first got sober, I quit my job with the city of Philadelphia. I was a trash man, right? Not like afraid to say that I was a trash man because the benefits were phenomenal.
I'm sure they were.
I was a trash man though.
Yeah.
But then like I got a job at like a temp agency, right? And I was working like 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, like mandatory 12s. It was horrible. Great money. Somewhere along the lines in my like sobriety, I was like, I didn't get sober to just get sober.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if it was just and if that's her story, that's okay too.
I've experienced that in friendships and relationships and jobs and stuff, in a lot, you know? People, places and things have definitely gotten like left behind if they're not, you know, if you're like on this path of just like continuing to like grow, again, no matter what that looks like financially, spiritually, physically, whatever, you know, and the people around you aren't on the same like vibration, like they kind of get behind like without you like even asking for it to it just kind of like happens, you know? But yeah, I was just like, okay, like I need a life that feels better than getting high, because I don't know about you, I'm sure you experienced the same thing. I loved that 5 minutes of being high more than I have ever. I've still never experienced love like that. I loved that more than I've ever loved anything else in my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, people have asked me before, like, I don't even remember, like, I think maybe one person, I say people, but like what heroin like felt like. And I'm like, probably if a Christian was standing in front of Jesus Christ, like that's like how you know what I mean? Like, I loved it more than anything. I've never experienced a love like that again.
No, and that's the thing. And like, that's why I always had that thought, right? Hence why I always relapsed a million times. But like, if opiates never existed, would I be this way? Again, I don't know. And I'm not trying to figure it out anymore. Turns out I got this thing. I'm a firm believer that you either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the way that we experience opiates is not the way that Carl experiences opiates. You know what I mean? He probably would get a little nauseous and be like, I'm never touching this shit ever again.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're right where we need to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you ever experienced that with, I like to say alcohol didn't bring me into the rooms, but it's taken me out of the rooms, you know, like I have definitely experienced also like drinking alcoholically and like not just opiates, you know what I mean? Like definitely kind of like everything.
Like in parts of like you're actively like when you weren't sober, you mean? Or
like when I would
leading up to
relapse.
it?
Yeah.
So I went through like a whole. I got a good job to mask my alcoholism or my addiction, right? So I just became a bartender.
I love that. Where
So
at?
like actually, so where we ate, local shout out at Johnny's, best cheesesteak on the main line by far. Check him out, Johnny's. My man Charles. If you ever meet him, he'll throw that up. But I don't even know. Oh, so yeah, like literally like 2 streets away, there was this place called the Grog.
Okay.
Big Nova bar. Actually somebody that I grew up with got me a job there, meant well, not like us, right? Didn't know that probably should not put me in a bar setting. So I got a job like bussing tables and bar backing.
And you were clean off opiate. Like you've already experienced treatment at this time, right?
I had already been to treatment twice at
Okay,
that point.
okay.
Yeah, I put up a status like, yo, looking for a
Yeah.
job.
Oh yeah. Fresh out of treatment.
And they were like, yo, I think we're hiring bus boys. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there
Yeah.
tonight. Worked my way up, became like the nighttime bar manager. Got fired like 2 or 3 years later for like literally we would shut down the upstairs bar, just like not on opiates.
Yeah.
Like proved to myself that like you either got it or you don't. Drinking out of the bottle like on camera, and like the owner was like, what are you doing there? And I'm like, that's Fireball.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, like alcohol did not give me the same effect.
Yeah.
But like when I was trying to stay away from opiates, despite myself, I guess.
Yeah. It did enough.
I was like, I can just drink, right?
Yeah.
Or I can just smoke weed or whatever it looks like.
Which is crazy because normal people don't have to say that to themselves. You know what I mean?
It's
like
a really good point, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm just going to smoke weed. And it's like, not a normal statement.
Yeah.
Not where like when somebody's like, well, it's just alcohol. It's like, well, if it's just alcohol,
yeah.
what's the big deal of not putting it in your body?
So I remember never having a problem without like my first few times getting sober, alcohol was not a part of the story whatsoever. And I remember telling my sponsor here in NA, God, I was 19 years old maybe at the time. I said, she was like trying to take me through like my steps. And I remember saying to her, I'm going to drink at my wedding, you know? And she said, Katie, you literally can't even find anybody to date you longer than a week. Like, what wedding are we? This is like crazy. You know what I mean? But like, and I've talked to people too that have had that same thought of like the wedding, the celebration, the this, the that it's like, am I going to, you know, be able to drink at?
I was saying it in
It's always like the wedding for some reason. You know what I mean? It is always that.
It wasn't my wedding. It was some my kids' wedding. I didn't even have kids at the time.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even have a girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And my therapist or my counselor, or whatever it was in small group, was like,
see, that's even crazier than me saying my wedding. I'm going to drink at my kids' wedding.
I was like, what? I'm never supposed to drink at my kid's wedding? They were like, you got a girlfriend right now? I'm like, no. And they're like, what kids?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just saying. And they were like, why don't we get through like tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, you got a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always like the wedding, or it was like my reason for not going to sober living was always something along the lines of like, well, what about my boys? Like, what about everybody I grew up with? And like a therapist would be like, how many people you hang out with? And I'm like, well, it's usually just me and my boy who gets high together. And they're like, maybe one day he'll be up there with you too.
Yeah.
And I was like, you got a point.
Yeah. I feel like half my graduating
something.
Class ended up in like treatment. I mean, that's exaggerating, but
it's actually,
you know,
pretty accurate.
A lot of us up here, it's like a Northeast thing. I think we're like born and it's like a rite of passage to like go to treatment if you're from like Philly, New Jersey, Massachusetts, you know.
Well, I think the opiate thing definitely hit us a little bit harder than maybe, I know it hit the nation hard, right? But, you know, like they were readily available everywhere.
Yeah.
And by the time that they were like getting rid of them, like I was like taking my boy's Suboxone, he was prescribed in high school. You know, it's like, that's not normal, you know? Like, so when people were like, oh, well, you know, you're never going to drink again. Like I did all of that when I was 16, 17 years old. Yeah. So, I mean, we could go on about that forever. All right. So you touched on what it looks like today. Before we shut it down, is there anything you want to say?
Has it been that long already? How long
I don't
were we
know.
talking for?
How long has it been? It's been, and we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't ask me, is there anything I want to say? Like,
Is there anything that
no, God, no.
is there anything that you could say to somebody, right? That's like going into treatment for the first time or going into, or maybe not even going into treatment, right? Struggling, right? Like afraid to even talk about whatever the fuck's going on, whether
No,
it
I don't.
whether it be like drinking, drugging, mental health, right? Whatever. Like what would you say to somebody much like yourself, right? When you were like, this is like, I'm a fucking loser. Like this is going to be my life. If you could have imagined like when you said that to yourself, right? Fast forward to today where you're talking on a fucking, it still blows me away that I have a podcast. But like you're talking on a podcast about essentially the one thing that used to literally ruin your life and run your life. What would you say to like anybody that might be struggling?
Maybe not the person struggling, but maybe just like everybody in general to just like be kind. Cause like you never know like what, there are things that I remember. There was a nurse when I was going through my couple days of like my little Baker Act, whatever, that, and I mean, she probably did it so that other patients weren't like scared because I was like not really clothed, but she like gave me her sweater, you know what I mean? And the like receptionist, like nurse. And I've never forgotten that, you know? And like you never know if you're going to be like the only recovery that somebody experiences. So it's like I always like to think like, am I acting the same way in meetings as when people like how am I acting when people like aren't looking? You know what I mean? So I like really try my best, and I think other people should too, to just try to be kind, especially like now, like everybody struggles now. You know what I mean? Everybody, I don't think I know one person that isn't going through like something. I feel like it's been like a rough couple years for a lot of people. And you just like never know. You know what I mean? So
Okay. Well, we definitely appreciate you coming all the way up here from Georgia. I know you had nothing else going on in the area. I think I was supposed to do like my whole YouTube
follow
thing.
us on
But whatever, we'll plug it in on the back end. So with that, appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.